3 Eutaw Place vignettes from this week. On Tuesday, it snowed. Briefly, for about 15 minutes, snowflakes floated down in the early night sky. My kids ran outside, jumping up and down, trying to catch them on their tongues. On Friday morning, our team of volunteers distributed food, including fresh produce, to neighbors. About 100 weekly boxes are going very quickly. Relationships are being built. Certain neighbors drive by to haul multiple boxes, delivering them to elderly and homebound neighbors in their building. A man we'll call Matthew walked up to the shul to get a box from his home in the southern part of our neighborhood here in Reservoir Hill. He transferred the food to a reusable shopping bag so he could carry it. He asked if we're hiring. He was laid off in March at the beginning of COVID. He hasn't worked since. He was on his way to a job fair later that day. On Thursday, at approximately the same time of night when my children had run giddily into the falling snow 2 days earlier, a man was shot and killed at Eutaw Place in Brooks Lane. When there's violence in the city, people react quickly. They judge, they blame, some frame their response in terms of public health, as the incoming mayor did in his conversation with me on Monday night. Others see only considerations of law and order. But pain and violence trigger most of us, as they should, because human life is valuable and public safety for all is essential. What questions do we ask ourselves when we're feeling anxious, when we suffer? Rivka in our Parsha has an experience of existential angst. She, like many women in Torah, is barren. After Yitzchak's plea, she becomes pregnant with twins, but the pregnancy is not an easy one. V'yitrotzatzu habanim b'kirba, but the children struggled in her womb. V'tomer im ken lama ze anochi, and she said, if so, why do I exist? Various commentators grapple with what she might mean by these words. The translation, why do I exist, reflects the approach of Chizkuni, who writes, Im Kain, if there is so much pain involved in pregnancy, why do I have to remain alive? Im Kain lama ze anochi, however, can also mean quite simply, if so, why am I this? Or why is this my lot? Rashi says, why is it that I longed and prayed to become pregnant? If this is the blessing, why did I bother? Building on this idea, Ibn Ezra said the word v'yitrotzatzu is related to the word mirutzeh, having to do with desire or satisfaction. Why did I desire this? She asked experienced mothers whether what she was going through was normal and was told that, in fact, it wasn't. This wasn't typical Braxton Hicks. This was something terrifying happening inside her. Sforno says, Lama ze anochi, why were my relatives so concerned that it would be I who provide the seed for Yitzchak when they said, At hayi le'alfei revava, may it be you who is the source of millions. Also, why did my husband insist that I become the mother of his children? Rivka's words, according to Sforno, echo Moshe's resistance to God's call generations later, or of women at times when trying to reconcile their biology with the expectation of others. Why should I play the role expected of me? Why should I bear the pain so that others may live? Why me? How many of us have asked similar questions in our own lives? Why is this me? Why am I here? Why is this my lot? I don't for a moment wish to minimize the reality of people's life challenges. They are real. Sometimes they hurt. None of us gets to sit in judgment of other people's experiences. But as I think back on my own week here on Eutaw Place, I personally find myself not dwelling on the murder nor on the pain of my neighbor who can't find a job. Each of these affects me, to be sure. Sometimes the suffering of others, neighbors, Beth Amers, overwhelms me. But most of the time, I'm focused on other things, on the opportunity to make a new acquaintance and build a relationship, on the blessing of Beth Am volunteers, who make time to distribute food and Reservoir Hill residents who look after their friends by bringing them sustenance. On the site, from our second floor window, of our teenage children dancing around in the falling snow by light of the street lamps. There are choices that we can't make in this world, but there are plenty of choices we can. One choice most of us can make is how we look at the world. There's a midrash based on a scene that comes later in our parasha. Yaakov has just tricked his father into giving him a blessing. When the plot is revealed, Yitzchak, Isaac, is upset. He's been deceived. Esav pleads with his father, "Bless me too, father." But Yitzchak is clear, "I blessed him, Gam Baruch Hu, and he shall be blessed." How does Yitzchak arrive at this conclusion? He makes a choice, and he changes his perspective. Here's the midrash. Rabbi Yitzchak said he, Yitzchak the patriarch, was going to curse him, that is Yaakov, Jacob. But the Kadosh Baruch Hu cautioned, "Beware, for if you curse him, you curse your own soul. For you just said, like a few verses ago, 'Cursed be they who curse you.'" Rabbi Levi now explores the question of choice and perspective. He said, 6 things serve a human. 3 are under one's control, and 3 are not under one's control. The eye, the ear, and the nose are not under one's control. As one sees what is not wished for, one hears what is not desired, and one smells what is not wanted. The mouth, the hand, and the foot are under one's control. Regarding the mouth, if one wishes to, one studies Torah. While if one wants to, one speaks badly, and if one wants to, one blasphemes and reviles. Regarding the hand, if one wishes, one can offer tzedakah, while if one wants, one can rob, and if one desires, one can murder. Regarding the feet, if one wishes, one can go to houses of theater and houses of the circus, these places in ancient Rome where lewd behavior prevails. While, if one wants, one can go to houses of assembly, synagogues, and houses of study, B'tei Midrash. But there are times when this paradigm shifts, says the Midrash. And in the moment that one merits the Kadosh Baruch Hu, God makes those things which one usually controls no longer in one's control. The Midrash gives an example for the hand and another for the foot and for the mouth. Now he, Yaakov, must remain blessed. The words that Yitzchak speaks in response to his son Esav's plea. Now, I want to be careful here. I don't think the Midrash is suggesting Yitzchak no longer had the power to speak his mind. If he wanted to curse Yaakov, he could have. If he had wanted to withdraw his blessing and give it to Esav, he probably could have. Modern Torah commentator Aviva Zornberg says he blesses in spite of himself. I think the wisdom of this Midrash is that Yitzchak realizes in the moment that forces have conspired to compel him to make a different choice. His wife has gone so far as to dress her son in animal skins to feel like the hairy Esav. His God has indicated Yaakov, not Esav, is the better choice for leadership of the family, of their fledgling Hebrew nation. It's not that Yitzchak realizes he's powerless, it's that he realizes he's wrong. Now, I don't want to go into all the reasons for that here, why Yaakov is the better choice, and there are people who have made other arguments about this. I think what's important, and what I want to notice, is that Yitzchak, like Rivka, when she endures the convulsive pains of her pregnancy, remains open to new possibilities, different ways of responding to life circumstances. In that scene, she receives an explanation for her trials. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 separate peoples shall issue from your body. 1 people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So at long last, having accepted this reality, Yitzchak does feel compelled to bless his son Esav, but not with fantasy, with honesty. See, your abode shall enjoy the fat of the earth and the dew of the heaven above. Yet by your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother, but when you grow restive, you shall break his yoke from your neck. Sometimes, my friends, we need to look at things from a different perspective. In Yitzchak's case, paradoxically, it took blindness to afford him the opportunity to see, to understand what was right. But there's an element of Yitzchak's approach that still leaves the reader a bit sad. He's not really an actor in his own story. More often, the character of Isaac, of Yitzchak, is acted upon by his father, by his wife, by his sons, by God. Yitzchak feels deeply, loves greatly, prays fervently. He's a man of deep emotion and spiritual conviction. But he's a bit of a schlemazel, you know? I wonder if we can go a bit further. I wonder if, while accepting our limitations, the things about ourselves and the world that we can't change, there are ways that we can still find joy in refocusing our attention or redirecting our gaze, even accepting our blindness. To be, as we learn in Pirkei Avot, sameach bechalko, content with our lot in life. Consider the following Hasidic parable told in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidic Judaism. There was once a musician, well known for the great beauty of his music, who came to play before the king. One particular melody was so loved by the king that he ordered the musician to play it for him several times a day. And so it was. After a time, however, the musician began to weary of the tune. No longer could he play it with the same passion and excitement as before. The king, to rekindle his musician's love for this favorite tune, ordered that a man be brought in from the market, one who had never heard the tune before. Seeing someone who had never heard him play, the musician's vigor was renewed, and he played the tune in all its beauty. Thus the king ordered a new man brought each day. After some time, the king sought other counsel, for to find a new audience each day was not an easy matter. It was decided that the musician should be blinded, so that he never see a human form again. Now, the blind musician sat before the king, and whenever the king sought to hear his favorite tune, he would simply say, "Here comes someone new, one who has never heard you play before." And the musician would play his tune with the greatest joy. Now, I don't think the story is about literal blindness. That would be, quite frankly, pretty horrifying. I think instead it's a metaphor about the possibilities of perspective. What can we turn off so that we can turn on our other senses and sensations, other ways of perceiving the world? How do we avoid staleness, bitterness, complacency, even cynicism? How do we access our best work and discover our better, more joyful selves? How can we run around in the snow knowing that violence and injustice persist in the world, even just up the block? I'll close with one final vignette of something that happened on Eutaw Place this week. For a while now, our Beth Am Black Lives Matter sign has been leaning. It started when a group of kids yanked on it and loosened it. And every once in a while, I would go over and try to stand it back upright, stepping on the earth with my shoe, trying to kind of pack down the soil. But inevitably, it would loosen, and it would lean again until eventually it looked like the leaning BLM sign of Pisa or something like that. Finally, giving up, thinking it's a little embarrassing that our sign is leaning over at this angle, I texted the guy who installed it and asked him if he could come by and stabilize the sign. I figured he'd need to stand it back up and then maybe insert something into the holes, or maybe dig it out and then really pack the earth back in. It frankly never occurred to me to do what he did. He just dug the holes deeper and sunk the sign further into the ground. So now the center of gravity is lower. It's much less likely to bend with the wind or because of someone's leaning on it. It's still plenty visible. It's still a powerful statement. It's just a bit lower. All I could see was the leaning sign and trying to get it back where it had been. The contractor had a different perspective. He saw how to make it better even than before. On Eutaw Place, as with everywhere, so much of life is about perspective. Shabbat Shalom.